Thus, these inhumane wretches went on, who could not be contented to satisfy their avarice only, and travel in the common road of wickedness. But, like their patron the devil, must make mischief their sport, cruelty their delight, and damning of souls their constant employment. Of all the piratical crews that were ever heard of, none of the English name came up to this in barbarity. Their mirth and their anger had much the same effect, for both were usually gratified with the cries and groans of their prisoners, so that they almost as often murdered a man from the excess of good humor as out of passion and resentment, and the unfortunate could never be assured of safety from them, for danger lurked in their very smiles. Welcome back to Biographics. I'm your host, cosmic horror author Eric Malachite, and today's video is about a man who may just be the most sadistic pirate to ever sail the seven seas. If you weren't about to guess Edward Lowe, then go ahead and comment down below who you think that title belongs to while you deploy your likes, subscribe to the channel if you're not, and check the links in the description. Let's get to it. Edward Ned Lowe was born in Westminster, London, according to good old Captain Charles Johnson, the most famous and enigmatic source of all things pirates, although not necessarily the most reliable. Baptismal records show that baby Edward, the son of Richard and Mary Lowe, was baptized in St. Margaret's Church on October 7th, 1688. So his birth likely took place in late September or early October. Ned Lowe, as he was more commonly referred to, came from a family of habitual lawbreakers. Thieves, villains, and scallywags, the lot of them. And it wasn't long before he joined their ranks. Or as Captain Johnson put it, nature seemed to have designed him for a pirate from his childhood. Education played almost no part in Ned's life. He could neither read nor write. Instead, he spent his childhood picking pockets, robbing, gambling, and fighting anyone who tried to stand up to him. Ned had at least two brothers, but we are only informed of the eldest one, Richard Lowe, Dick to his friends. As a young boy, Dick developed a clever way to pickpocket people by hiding in a basket on the shoulders of an accomplice and swiping hats and wigs of passers-by. When he got older, Dick Lowe teamed up with two other men named Hall and Bunce, and together they began burglarizing houses in London before being caught in 1707 and being sentenced to hang. According to the Newgate Calendar, a popular record of executions carried out at Newgate Prison, all three men went to the gallows on December 17th, 1707. It is likely that Ned Lowe wasn't present for his brother's execution. In his late teens, early 20s, Lowe took to the sea, sometimes accompanied by his other brother whose name we don't know. After about 3 or 4 years of this, he made it to the New World and settled in Boston, where he worked in a rigging house. As far as we know, Ned Lowe only returned to England one more time, to see his mother. It was a short visit because he fully intended to build a new life for himself in America. Back in Boston, he had already met a woman named Eliza Marble, and the two got married at the First Church in Boston on August 12th, 1714. Random fun fact, they were married by Reverend Benjamin Wadsworth, the future president of Harvard College. By all accounts, it seems that Lowe tried to leave his old ways behind and walk the straight and narrow in Boston. He went to church, he had a steady job that paid well, and he intended to start a family. He was more Ned Flanders than Ned Lowe at this point.
Handles Flanders, but my friends call me Ned.
But fate did its darn diddliest to make him stray from the righteous path. And throughout the rest of this video, if you start picturing Ned Flanders in a pirate hat, you're welcome. Eliza gave birth to a boy sometime during the mid-1710s, but he died in infancy. Then, in 1719, she gave birth to a daughter named Elizabeth. Although the girl survived, Eliza did not, triggering a downward spiral for Lowe, who became angrier and drunker and more violent. Eventually, this cost him his job as a rigger. He still had a baby to support though, so Lowe found whatever work he could, specifically a voyage to the Bay of Honduras aboard a sloop to collect a shipment of logwood. This could have been an easy gig, but Lowe was still seething inside and needed just one more push to finally make him snap. And he got his one bad day one night when the captain ordered the men to forego dinner to go carry one last shipment. In a hangry mood, Lowe picked up a musket and fired at the captain. He missed, instead hitting some other poor schmo, but the action had the desired effect on the crew. A dozen of them mutinied and sailed off in the boat, determined to become pirates. The following day, they captured a sloop better suited to their needs, went on board her, hoisted a black flag, and declared war with the whole world. And there is a song by Iced Earth that you should totally listen to after this video. It's called Black Flag.
We are the
From Honduras, Lowe and his crew sailed to the Cayman Islands where they had a fortuitous encounter with another pirate named George Loda, who enticed Ned Lowe to enter a partnership together, sail with Loda aboard his ship, the Happy Deliverance, and share in the booty. Lowe and his ragtag gang of misfits happily accepted, but the better question was, why would Loda even offer such a beneficial deal to begin with? He had all the advantages. He was a more experienced captain, he had a bigger ship and a bigger crew. He could have just plundered the small sloop if he wanted. He could have forced Lowe and his men to join up, or he could have just killed them. Instead, he offered not only a partnership, but even made Ned Lowe his first mate and took him on as a protege. If this were the Princess Bride, this Loda would end up being his brother who miraculously survived being hanged or something. Why exactly Loda would be so magnanimous, we can't really say. But since his early years are completely unknown, some have speculated that he and Lowe already knew each other. Maybe from London, maybe from Boston, or maybe they served on the same ship years earlier. Whatever the case might have been, Lowe spent the first half of 1722 as Loda's second-in-command, conducting raids in the Caribbean and learning the tricks of the trade. Then on May 28, 1722, the pirates captured a brigantine bound for Boston, and both captain and first mate agreed that Lowe had studied enough under Loda's learning tree. So Ned Lowe took a crew of 44 men, 2 guns, 4 swivels, 6 quarter casks of powder aboard the captured ship, and became its new captain, setting off to seek his own fortunes. Now the captain of a decent pirate vessel with a proper crew, Ned Lowe left the Caribbean and instead opted for New England, capturing his first solo prizes off the coast of Rhode Island. However, he didn't stay long because the governor dispatched 2 sloops after him when he heard there were pirates in his waters. Lowe kept heading north, reaching Nova Scotia where he found a delicious prize, served on a silver platter to him in Port Rosemary. There were 13 ships in the harbor, but none were equipped for fighting. Lowe raised the black flag and demanded a complete surrender, warning that any resistance would be met with no quarter. All of them capitulated peacefully and were plundered, and Lowe even kept the biggest one of all, an 80-ton schooner, for himself. He renamed it the Fancy and made it his new flagship, while his second-in-command, Charles Harris, took charge of his old brigantine. Lowe was a man who didn't like to overstay his welcome in a particular area, and instead travel far and wide in search of new targets. After he was done with North America, he sailed across the Atlantic to the Azores, otherwise known as the Azores, then towards Africa near Cabo Verde, and then back across the ocean off the coast of South America. During this time, he captured multiple ships without much hassle since the threat of violence was enough to deter most of them. He changed his flagship again, this time to a pink he named the Rose. Those who did try to stand up to Lowe were punished severely, such as was the case with a Captain Carter of the Right Galley, who, because he showed some inclination to defend himself, was cut and mangled in a barbarous manner. There were also 2 Portuguese friars, whom they tied to the foremast and several times let them down before they were dead, merely to gratify their own ferocious dispositions. After they had plundered this vessel, they cut her cables, rigging, and sails to pieces, and sent her adrift to the mercy of the waves. On another occasion, Lowe captured a Portuguese ship only to discover that the captain threw a bag full of gold coins into the sea rather than have it fall into pirate hands. What a legend. And let's just say, he didn't take the news well. Upon this intelligence, Lowe raved and stormed like a fury, ordered the captain's lips be cut off and broiled before his eyes, then murdered him and all his crew. Such a nice guy, right? By 1723, Ned Lowe was the most feared pirate in the Atlantic, and it looked like he had no intention of slowing down. His next rampage took place around the Leeward Islands in the Caribbean, where he successfully captured no less than 19 ships of different sizes, and in general treated their crews with a barbarity unequaled even among pirates. But success breeds complacency, and Lowe got too cocky. He had 2 ships in his command at this stage, having lost or sunk the others, the Fancy and the Ranger. One day, he thought he had spotted his next target, a helpless Royal Navy vessel named the HMS Greyhound, commanded by Captain Peter Solgaard. But the Greyhound wasn't helpless at all. In fact, it was a 20-gun man-o'-war prowling those waters in search of Ned Lowe. Upon seeing the two pirate ships, the Greyhound began retreating, prompting them to give chase. This, however, was a trap, and Lowe sailed right into it, with the Fancy receiving a complimentary broadside of cannons just as his men were getting ready to board. Both pirate ships turned to flee, and now it was time for the Greyhound to give chase. Eventually, a fortuitous shot destroyed the main mast of the Ranger, leaving Harris and his men at the mercy of the Royal Navy. Lowe, instead of turning back to help, decided to abandon them and escaped to safety in the Fancy, with his behavior throughout this whole action showed him to be a base, cowardly villain. For had Lowe's sloop fought half so briskly as Harris's had done, as they were under a solemn oath to do, the man-of-war could never have hurt them. Captain Solgaard took Charles Harris and the other captured pirates to Rhode Island, where they were all tried and hanged in July 1723. Meanwhile, Lowe continued with his cruel ways, if anything becoming more sadistic than ever after suffering, as far as we know, the only defeat of his piratical career. The first vessel that had the misfortune of running into the Fancy was a fishing boat from Nantucket, captained by one Nathan Skiff. Despite surrendering, Lowe cut off his ears and shot him in the head before sinking the whaler. The captain of another ship had his entrails ripped out, while another had his ears cut off and was forced to eat them with pepper and salt. Lowe's savagery got so extreme that his men started refusing to comply with some of his orders, and they weren't exactly innocent angels either. In fact, it's possible that Lowe's excessive cruelty might have been his undoing. We say possible because we're not sure what happened to him. Some claim that the crew finally had enough of Ned Lowe and mutinied after he murdered his quartermaster while he slept. They marooned him only to have Lowe rescued by a passing French vessel. However, once they realized who he was, the French took Ned Lowe to Martinica, where he was hanged for piracy. Other than this legend, Captain Johnson offers no information on his fate. He wrote that Ned Lowe continued plundering ships off the coast of North America before doing the same in the Caribbean, and once he returned to South America near Brazil, there was no more news of him or his ship. It's possible that he successfully lived out his days in anonymity, or more likely was sunk by a storm and went down to Davy Jones's locker, a fitting end to one of the most vicious men ever to sail the seven seas. I hope you learned something today, and if you dug this video, be sure to deploy your likes, comment your favorite pirate from history, subscribe, and share this video with someone who loves learning about history and pirates. I'm Eric Malachite, and I'll see you next time, Space Cowboy. And yes, I say that because I grew up with Cowboy Bebop.